At the surface right now, 14.7 pounds of force are pressing on every square inch of exposed skin on every person reading this. The atmosphere pushes inward from every direction. Nobody feels it. Internal pressure matches exactly. This is one atmosphere. At 10 meters underwater, it doubles. At 20, it triples. At 100 meters, 11 atmospheres push inward on every surface of the body. The chest, the sinuses, the eardrums, the air spaces inside the skull. Every 10 meters adds another atmosphere. This is not a metaphor. This is fluid mechanics, and the ocean does not stop at 100 meters. Between 200 and 1,000 meters, the twilight zone holds more life than any other layer in the ocean. Billions of tons of fish rising and sinking every night in a migration no one films. But life at those depths does not concern us here. What concerns us is what happens to a human body when the water pushes back. The reason atmospheric pressure goes unnoticed on land is equilibrium. The air inside the lungs, the gas dissolved in the blood, the fluid in every tissue all push outward with the same force the atmosphere pushes inward. The system balances. It has balanced since before birth. Every cell in the body was built at one atmosphere and expects one atmosphere. Underwater, the system breaks. Water is roughly 800 times denser than air. Pressure increases linearly with depth, and the air spaces inside the body do not adjust fast enough. The imbalance starts immediately. At 3 meters, sinuses feel it. At 10 meters, eardrums protest. At 30, the lungs are losing a negotiation they were never designed for. The lungs are the first problem. At the surface, they hold about 6 liters of air. At 10 meters, that volume halves. At 30 meters, it is down to a quarter. A free diver descending to 40 meters without equipment carries about 1.5 liters of compressed air inside a chest cavity that was built for 6. The rib cage flexes inward. The diaphragm rises. Blood shifts from the extremities into the thorax to fill the space the air no longer occupies. This is the mammalian dive reflex. It keeps the lungs from collapsing entirely. It works up to a point. That point is somewhere between 40 and 100 meters, depending on the individual. Beyond it, the chest wall cannot flex further. The alveoli begin to compress against each other. Pulmonary edema, blood in the lungs. Herbert Nitsch holds the deepest free dive record. In 2012, off the coast of Santorini, he descended to 253 meters on a single breath. No fins for most of the dive. A weighted sled pulled him down. At that depth, roughly 26 atmospheres pressed on a chest cavity holding a fraction of a liter of air. He lost consciousness during ascent. He suffered severe decompression sickness, brain damage, years of rehabilitation. He survived. Most of the depth record attempts before him did not end that way. Free diving below 200 meters is not a sport. It is a negotiation with a body that was not designed to go there. But free divers do not go to 1,000 meters. The deepest breath hold dives touch the edge of the mesopelagic and stop. The body cannot go further without fundamental changes to the contract between inside and outside. Below 300 meters, the only humans who work are saturation divers, and the way they survive is by removing the problem entirely. If pressure compresses gas, the solution is to let the gas compress. Breathe air at the same pressure as the water around the body and equilibrium returns. Lungs stay full. Chest stays open. The body does not fight the water. It joins it. This is the principle behind saturation diving. Divers live for weeks in pressurized chambers on the deck of a ship. The air inside matches the pressure at working depth. When they descend to the seafloor, there is no pressure change. When they ascend, they return to the chamber. The decompression happens once. Slowly, sometimes over weeks, the body must release every molecule of dissolved gas gradually, layer by layer, tissue by tissue, too fast, and the gas forms bubbles. Bubbles in the joints cause pain. Bubbles in the spinal cord cause paralysis. Bubbles in the brain cause death. The divers sit in the chamber and wait. Some describe it as the hardest part. Not the depth, not the cold, the waiting. The cost of equilibrium is nitrogen. At surface pressure, nitrogen is inert. It dissolves in the blood at a low concentration and does nothing. At depth, more dissolves. At around 5 atmospheres, enough nitrogen saturates the nervous system to produce narcosis, impaired judgment, euphoria, tunnel vision. Jacques Cousteau called it the rapture of the deep. There are stories of divers at 60 meters offering their regulators to passing fish. Not as a joke, they believed the fish needed air. The narcosis felt like clarity. The divers were certain they were thinking more clearly than ever. They were not. At greater pressures, nitrogen is replaced with helium in the breathing mix. Helium does not cause narcosis, but it changes everything else. It conducts heat roughly 5 times faster than air. A saturation diver breathing heliox at 300 meters loses body heat through every breath. The chambers are heated to 30 degrees. The divers still shiver. Helium also changes the way the vocal cords vibrate. At depth, a human voice on heliox sounds like a distorted recording played at the wrong speed. Divers describe hearing their own voices and not recognizing them. After weeks at pressure, some say the voice becomes theirs. The old one starts to sound wrong. Life inside a saturation chamber is not what most people imagine. The space is the size of a small bathroom, shared with 2 or 3 other divers for up to a month. The air smells metallic. Sound is distorted because helium changes the speed of sound. Voices are unrecognizable. Divers communicate with electronic unscramblers or hand signals. They eat through a small airlock. They sleep in bunks stacked against a curved steel wall. Outside the porthole is the deck of a ship. Inside, the pressure is equivalent to the bottom of a 300-meter deep sea. The divers can hear the hull creak when the ship rolls. Everything in the chamber is calibrated to keep them alive. A single valve failure could kill everyone inside in seconds. The deepest any human has been on breathing gas is 701 meters. Comex Hydra 8, 1988, 6 divers in a chamber in Marseille. The pressure inside matched the depth of the Mediterranean off the continental shelf. 71 atmospheres. The air they breathed was roughly 99% helium and 1% oxygen. Their voices were unrecognizable even with unscramblers. They sounded like machines. They stayed at pressure for days. Decompression took weeks. No one has gone deeper since. That was almost 40 years ago. There is one event that shows what pressure does when the math reverses. November 5, 1983, North Sea. The Byford Dolphin, a semi-submersible drilling rig. 4 divers were in a pressurized system at 9 atmospheres, a chamber connected to a diving bell through a short tunnel sealed by a clamp. A crew member opened the clamp before the tunnel was depressurized. The pressure differential was 8 atmospheres. The air inside escaped in a fraction of a second. One diver, closest to the opening, was forced through a gap of 60 centimeters. The body did not fit. The autopsy report listed expansion of all gas-containing spaces, organs displaced, the circulatory system emptied. The other 3 divers in the chamber died within milliseconds. Every gas bubble that forms when a sealed bottle is opened happened simultaneously inside every blood vessel in their bodies. The investigation took 19 years. Below 700 meters, no human has survived on breathing gas. Below that line, the ocean belongs to machines. Submersibles with titanium pressure hulls rated to full ocean depth. The Trieste reached the bottom of the Mariana Trench in 1960. Jacques Picard and Don Walsh sat inside a steel sphere roughly 2 meters across, at 1 atmosphere, while the ocean outside pushed inward with more than 1,000 times that force. The descent took almost 5 hours. For most of it, they saw nothing. The water outside the viewport was black. The only sound was the hull adjusting, a low, metallic groan that neither man had heard in testing. At roughly 9,000 meters, something hit the viewport. A spider web of fractures appeared in the outer acrylic window. They heard it clearly. They looked at each other. They continued anyway. The dive lasted 20 minutes on the bottom. The silt they stirred blocked the camera. They saw a flatfish or something that looked like one. They came back up. The ascent took 3 hours and 15 minutes. Nobody returned to the bottom of the Mariana Trench for 52 years. At 1,000 atmospheres, every square centimeter of a hull bears 1 ton of force. Roughly the weight of a small car balanced on a fingertip. The steel does not bend. It does not crack. It holds, or it does not. There is no middle state. Submersible implosion happens faster than the speed of sound in water. The hull fails at one point. The pressure wave converges inward. The interior volume collapses to a fraction of itself in less than 1 millisecond. The physics does not leave room for experience. The nerve impulse that carries pain travels at roughly 120 meters per second. Implosion at depth completes in less time than it takes that signal to cross a single synapse. Anyone inside ceases to exist before the brain registers that something has changed. The ocean does not care about the thickness of the hull. It cares about the math. If the hull is engineered correctly, the forces balance, and the sphere holds indefinitely. If a single weld is flawed, if the titanium has a microfracture, if the viewport seal deforms under thermal cycling, the failure is total and instantaneous. There is no warning. There is no partial failure. The margin between survival and obliteration at full ocean depth is the quality of a weld. The creatures that live at those depths do not resist pressure. They are made of it. No air spaces, no lungs, no swim bladders. Their proteins fold under conditions that would denature ours in microseconds. Their cell membranes are built from different lipids, structured to stay fluid at pressures that would solidify a human cell wall. They do not hold the ocean out. They let it in. A snailfish at 8,000 meters is not surviving 800 atmospheres. It is 800 atmospheres. The distinction is not semantic. It is the reason they are there and we are not. We build 13-ton titanium spheres to visit a place where a translucent fish the size of a hand lives without effort. The fish has no skeleton rigid enough to crush, no air pocket to compress, no boundary between itself and the water. It is pressure, shaped into something that swims. Every engineering problem that cost us decades to solve, evolution bypassed by removing the problem entirely. No air, no resistance, no wall between inside and out. 2 people went to the bottom of the ocean in 1960 and came back. The sphere that protected them weighed 13 tons. The viewport that cracked was the only thing between 1 atmosphere and 1,100. If you pressed a finger against the glass at that moment, the full weight of every building in a mid-sized city would be pressing back from the other side. That gap between where the body works and where it does not, it is the thinnest margin in exploration, and it is measured in centimeters of steel. The only people who have gone deeper voluntarily are the ones who built a machine to go for them. But that is another story.